Most law firm owners struggle not because they get rid of people too early, but rather because they hang on to bad employees too long. Welcome to this week's episode of the Your Practice Mastered podcast. My name is Richard James, and today we're going to unpack this question that starts with, are you using hope as a strategy to find the right team members? Most of you grew your firm not necessarily knowing where you were headed. You opened your firm for various reasons, and you just started generating leads, clients. You made some profit. You invested in more advertising and more marketing, and then you started getting support staff based on either what you thought was right or the way you were taught. And before you know it, you have this bolted on mess that may or may not resemble something that creates chaos for you. And so what I suggest is that we should be doing things by design. So creating the firm that they want, as opposed to reacting and being in chaos all the time. Regardless of where you are right now, understanding how to have a framework in order to build this is important. And so as we grow, the way we build capacity traditionally is through adding humans. We have to have a system to attract and vet quality humans that we can then manage and we can lead. The reason this has become so important to us is because as our company starts to do more staffing for our clients, we've transitioned from being a consulting company that occasionally staffs to a full-on staffing agency that has consulting services and training services. As we've made that transition, we recognize the reason why the staff they did hire were failing was not necessarily because the staff were bad staff. It was because the firm didn't have good quality systems. So we had to sit down first and ensure we identified the systems the firm had and then suggest what systems they should put in place. And then we can start putting good quality team members in and they could start to thrive. Even after we did that, we had to explain to the firm that we're working with that when we build a system to vet employees, we shouldn't be surprised when the system catches a bad employee that we have to let go and kind of start over again. Depending on the role, it's not unusual to have to go through a couple of tries before you find a good team member. Usually intake agents, appointment setting agents, you have to go through more than 1, 2, or 3 to find a good one. Salespeople, you oftentimes have to go through more than 1 or 2 to find a good one. If you do it right, you can find a good attorney and they should be able to stay with your firm if you have a good system and a good process. As you bring your new team members through the process, you should understand that the first 4 stages of the process are really designed to eliminate the bad apples. If we come back to our drawing of our 7 stages of bringing on humans, the first stage is the deciding phase is whether or not you should bring on this person. Are they going to make the company money? Are they going to save the company money? That's a vetting process for you as a firm to determine, should you do this? And then if you decide you should do this, then what does the recruiting process look like? And there's an entire vetting process that determines who we're going to let through the door. And then once we let them through the door, it leads to our next stage, the onboarding stage. And that's where we're going to focus today. Look, if you want more information about how to build an onboarding process, visit us at thelawfirmsecret.com. We've got all sorts of free resources there. You can schedule a call with us and have a conversation. Happy to do that with you. The reason why this is so important is because the onboarding stage is an extension of the recruiting process. So just because we found the right person, they interviewed well, they passed the skills test, and we clearly articulated what they were up against, and they still said they wanted to do it. And we believe because of personality tests and background checks and interviews that they were the right person, doesn't mean that they've made it to the game. It means they've made it for the right to try out for the game. And the tryout is called onboarding. Now, the onboarding process serves a couple of purposes. First, it sets the employee up for success so they have all the tools they need to succeed. Second, it allows the firm to score the new employee to determine if they're going to be a good player. So whether this is somebody that you found on your own or this is somebody that you found from a staffing agency like us, what you have to recognize is just because the staffing agency found you somebody or you found somebody on your own and you've brought them into your company and you've hired them doesn't mean they're in for good. It means that we have to go through this next phase, then they have to prove that they are of value, and you as a company have to prove that you're of value to them. So let's break down this onboarding process. Now, let me stop by saying, if at any time in this process we determine that they're not a good fit, we have to issue a verbal warning. If they still don't cure the situation that was wrong and they don't make better decisions or behave better, then we issue a second warning. If by the second warning you don't see some better behavior, you're now starting to look for another recruit. And if they make another mistake, you're inviting this team member to be a superstar somewhere else. And that's okay. It doesn't mean you failed. What's more than likely true is you devised the system to identify when someone wasn't going to work out long before it was too late. We shouldn't lament the fact that they had to leave and we have to start over. We should celebrate the fact that the system found somebody that wasn't going to be a fit early and didn't wait till too long. I don't know about you, but as a business owner, my biggest sin is hanging on to team members that weren't performing too long. And by the way, I kind of knew it early on, but I looked the other way because I was so busy in my business and I just needed the help so bad that I just reacted to the fact that I was just going to let this bad behavior slide. So the first idea is that we create a clarity and a role definition. The onboarding process should be less than 30 days, somewhere between 7 and 14 days to determine their overall behavior. I'm going to identify what acceptable performance is, what exceptional performance is, my non-negotiables. Say it like this. If I hire somebody in the first 14 days and I tell them, listen, you can't get sick, you can't take off, no personal time, no doctor's visits, whatever, in these first 14 days, because once we start, I need you to be fully committed to this. And if you're not fully committed to it, that's non-negotiable for us. If God forbid something does happen, that's an urgent situation, you have to understand that you must communicate with us in advance. No show, no call is a non-negotiable. You will be let go immediately. Right? This is some of the cultural decisions you have to make. You have to decide what these are. And then you're going to create a scorecard that you're going to use throughout this process. And you're going to make sure you take care of all the documents that they need for HR. Then we're going to have a structured and integrated plan. That's step 2. You need to create this 30-day schedule so they understand where they're supposed to be and when. There are meetings they have to be at. There's trainings they have to be at. And we're going to assign them a mentor so they hold their hand and they can make sure that they win all along the way. We're setting daily and weekly check-ins to make sure that they're happy with what's going on and we're happy with what's going on. And then we want to make sure they clearly understand how to communicate with us and how we can communicate with them. This is super important. There's so many different forms of communication. How do you want them to be communicated with? This should be lined out and communicated clearly. Whose hardware are we going to use? Are they using your hardware? Are they supposed to have their own hardware? What are you doing to facilitate them to understand what their expectations are and how they should operate? The third step is this idea of immersion. So what are your standards so that they understand how to immerse themselves into the culture of the firm? What are your core values and how are they reviewing them? How is the firm coming alongside them? And how did we welcome them as a firm? And how do we make them feel at home? There's the positive side of how to make them feel awesome, but there's also this accountability side of how are they performing and how are they acting and what are they doing? And if they're breaking rules of engagement or they're not doing things the way we say they're supposed to do, and we were clear about the way they should be doing it, well, then we need to have a cure policy of how we're going to verbally warn them, how we're going to warn them in writing, and how we're going to eventually end the relationship if this behavior continues. The fourth step is we're verifying their skill test accuracy. We're making sure we assign them controlled work inside of their guidelines. We're having them shadow people. We are testing compliance and we're reviewing the work product. Now, this starts to blend into the training section, but the light version of this should exist in onboarding, not the heavy version of training. We're just starting to give them easy tasks to do to see, are they willing to be compliant? Are they capable of being compliant? The fifth section is we're basically observing and filtering behavior. tracking to make sure that they've got deadline integrity based on what we told them to do. We're observing their energy and their initiative. And are they willing and able? Are they volunteering? Are they laying back and waiting for things to happen? We're evaluating their responsiveness and their feedback. And we're seeing how they communicate and how do they handle duress or challenging situations, and how do they document, and how are we documenting corrective behavior, and how are they responding to that documentation? Are they rising to the occasion? And then step 6, so you're looking internally and making some decisions about what they're doing and how they're performing. Do we see clearly how they're going to save the company money or make the company money? Are we seeing this come to fruition? And if not, we've got to have some really serious conversations. Did we get this job position wrong, or did we get the wrong person? In step 7, we're really making this final confirmation. We're reviewing our scorecards, the overall behavior and all the things that we've been measuring all the way through. And if we haven't issued any verbal warnings or written warnings, and we haven't asked for corrective behavior along the way, then it should be a green light. But we still have to sit down and evaluate where we are. And is there anything else we see that's a problem? We have to talk to our other team members and figure it out. This is the onboarding process. And so if an agency helped you hire this person, you have to understand that they handled the sourcing and the recruiting and the vetting and all the things that they did to get you the right person. They can't do this onboarding process because this is internal. So they rely on you to run these processes. If you're in our program, we've created templates and tools for you to do all this. If you're not in our program, that's okay. You should take this outline and start building your own onboarding processes. As a business owner, you're too busy to do all these things. And it's why you pay the premium to an agency to do this. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to say, well, I don't want to pay for an agency and I don't want to do this again. So I'm just going to look the other way and I'm going to be okay with this behavior and I'm going to let it slide. That's the first crumble. That's the first crack in the foundation. That's the first step into your life being chaotic. If you want to build a better law firm, put an onboarding system in your hiring process today. You'll be happy you did. Look, if you want more information about how to build an onboarding process, visit us at thelawfirmsecret.com. We've got all sorts of free resources there. You can schedule a call with us and have a conversation. Happy to do that with you. But know this, if you're still working on this concept of hope to run your firm and staff your firm, you're going to find yourself disappointed somewhere down the road.